Hello, everybody. It's me, Ian Rodriguez. Welcome back to the 21 Day Challenge, where we are reading through the Gospel of John in 21 days. And many of you are partnering it with a fast. And ta-da, you have made it. This is the last day of the 21 Day Challenge. So it may be the last day of the fast. What has God done for you? That's what I'm wondering. I know what he's done for me. You know, I'm not going to lie. This particular 21 Day Challenge was very challenging, actually. And being able to partner with the Gospel of John, though, has been so enlightening. I hope that you've gotten some great insight into the Gospel of John and who John is, and maybe even a deeper relationship with Jesus. So today we are in chapter 21. So we have gone through the entirety of the Gospel of John, getting to see Jesus come on scene with John the Baptist, validating legally who Jesus is. He is the Son of God. We see all of the interactions that he had that John records, especially the woman at the well. And so we learn that Jesus is the living water. He is the bread of life. He is the bridegroom who is preparing a place for his bride. There are so many deeper revelations of who Jesus is all throughout the Gospels. So 2 days ago, we got to relive the crucifixion of Jesus and him, in my opinion, turning water into wine once again. And so here we are now in chapter 21. Jesus is about to show himself alive for the third time to his disciples. So John documents this encounter in chapter 21. So let's dive right on in. It says, after this, Jesus appeared again to his disciples, this time at the Tiberias Sea, or the Sea of Galilee. So we know that he's shown up twice into a locked room, right? And so now John is recording that the third time that they see Jesus alive again, resurrected, is at the Sea of Galilee, almost where this all began for them, these fishermen, right, who encountered Jesus there the first time. This is how he did it. Simon Peter, Thomas, nicknamed the twin, Nathanael from Cana in Galilee, the brothers of Zebedee, and 2 other disciples were together. We know John was there as well. Simon Peter announced, I'm going fishing. Whoa, let's stop right here. First of all, I want you to know that 7 disciples now are together in this particular moment. We know that there are now 11 disciples that have been left. Judas has hung himself. So they will later on in the book of Acts assign another disciple so that there are 12 disciples. But here we see 7 of them. And Peter says, I'm going fishing. And we know that this is where Peter encountered Jesus. He was a fisherman, and you can go back and look in other gospels to see how he was called forth. And here he is, sort of full circle moment for Peter. And it says that the rest of them replied, we're going with you. So they decide that they're going to go with Peter fishing. And they went out and got into the boat. So 7 of them. And I want you to note that the number 7 is a holy, divine number. Okay. So we're coming to the completion of the Gospel of John. And here he's recognizing that 7 of them were together. So something miraculous is about to happen. It says, so they went out and got into the boat, and they caught nothing that night. Boy, I bet this was really familiar for them. This is also going back to the very first time they met Jesus. They weren't catching nothing in that boat. When the sun came up, Jesus was standing on the beach, but they didn't recognize him. Now, we don't know whether that's because there's a fog or a mist, you know, that sometimes happens. And especially we know that they're kind of further out. They're about 100 yards out or so from the shore. And so they didn't recognize that that was Jesus who was there on the beach. Jesus spoke to them. So he calls out, good morning. Did you catch anything for breakfast? And they answered no. And so he said, throw the net off the right side of the boat and see what happens. Now, I'm telling you, this is a mirror to how they met Jesus. So something even more miraculous is about to happen. They did what he said. And all of a sudden, there were so many fish in it, they weren't strong enough to pull it in. Wow. This is definitely a mirror. They did catch a whole lot of fish the very first time that they met Jesus, but this time the Bible was very clear to tell us that they were not even strong enough to pull it in. That's how many heavy, big fish were in this net. Then the disciple Jesus loved, which we know now is John. This is how I told you he describes himself, said to Peter, "It's the master." He must have come to his recollection. All these 3 years later, he's remembering how he met him. And in that moment, when the net's too heavy, when it's so full of fish, he's like, "It's the master. It's got to be Jesus." And when Simon Peter realized that it was the master, he threw on some clothes, for he was stripped for work, and dove into the sea. You could see Peter's enthusiasm as he dives into the sea to rush to shore, because he's like, could it be? Is it Jesus once again coming and showing us that he is resurrected? And the other disciples came in the boat, for they weren't far from the land, 100 yards or so, pulling along the net full of fish. You see this picture that's here painted here. It says that when they got out of the boat, they saw a fire laid with fish and bread cooking on it. What is this mirror to you? Do you remember him feeding the 5,000, which is recorded in every gospel? What did they multiply, right? They multiplied the fish and the bread. And here we see Jesus for the third time, another holy number, showing up, because John has said this is the third time that we're seeing him. He's showing up and he's cooking for them. He's cooking what? Fish and bread. And this is just even more validation of who Jesus is and what he knows about their life together, that he's doing all of these things symbolically in validation that he is the master, the Messiah, the one whom is risen and will never die again. Jesus said, "Bring some of the fish you've just caught." And Simon Peter joined them and pulled the net to shore, 153 big fish. And even with all those fish, the net didn't rip. So we see here that John is saying, man, it was so heavy. There was 153 big, healthy fish there, and it should have ripped the net, but it didn't. Something supernatural has just happened. Jesus said, "Breakfast is ready." Not one of the disciples dare ask, "Who are you?" For they knew it was the master. Nobody is saying, nobody is thinking, could this really be Jesus? This isn't possible. No, they believe. They have faith. They're seeing him. And that's what John is saying. Nobody dared even think it or say it because they knew that it was Jesus. Just then, Jesus took the bread and gave it to them. Wow. And he did the same with the fish, just like he did with the 5,000, right? And this is now the third time Jesus has shown himself alive to the disciples since he was being raised from the dead. So this is the third sighting. This is the third moment that they're with him. And what are they doing? They're going to eat together. They're going to break bread together. Jesus is actually cooking for them. Wow. This in and of itself, can you imagine? I know because I cook for my family. I love a meal that somebody else cooks for me. Okay, come on. And we know this is the first time that we are even seeing in John's gospel or any gospel that I can think of that Jesus is cooking. That he's cooking. And I'm sure that he did, but this is the first time that we see after he's resurrected that John is very clear to say this is the posture of our Messiah who has returned. He's not cocky or arrogant. He's there cooking and serving us. He's saying, come and bring of what you've caught and come sit close to me. Wow, what a God we serve, that he calls us close, that he cooks the meal, that he is the one who breaks the bread and hands us of what he is making for us. And after breakfast, Jesus said to Simon Peter, "Simon, son of John, do you love me more than this?" And he's actually asking, right, do you love me? Now we know that Peter, boy, he's going fishing for a reason this day, right? He's got a lot on his mind. He's got a lot that's going on, and a lot has happened for him. What he hasn't been able to yet address with Jesus is that Jesus was right about him denying him 3 times. So I'm sure that this moment here, this is a very intimate moment that he's having here with Peter. He's being confronted in this way by Jesus, but it's not the way that you think it is. It just Jesus reestablishing this love and connection with Peter to heal something in Peter, to heal an insecurity or a shame that he may be feeling. And Peter may not understand it, but John is sure getting it because he's the one who's writing these things down. Do you love me more than these? And he says, yes, Master. You know that I love you. And Jesus said, feed my lambs. And then he asked him a second time, Simon, son of John, do you love me? Whoa. Yes, Master, you know I love you. And Jesus said, shepherd my sheep. And then he said it a third time, Simon, son of John, do you love me? Peter was upset that he had asked for the third time, do you love me? So he answered, Master, you know everything there is to know. You've got to know that I love you. He gets upset because he feels like, Jesus, why are you questioning me? I know that I let you down, but I love you still. I know that I denied you 3 times, and you were right about that. Before the rooster crowed, it came to me as he was crowing that I had done this despicable thing against you, that I feel as though I have even betrayed you, just as Judas did. But he didn't betray him. He just denied him. There was still love for Jesus, and Jesus knew that. Because like I've told you before, Jesus knows the posture of our heart. And Jesus said, feed my sheep. So Jesus then gives him this mandate. As he has already told Simon, Peter, that he will be called Peter. And that's why, even though he's calling him Simon, he knows that he's given him the name Peter, which is rock, in which he will build his church. And he's leaving this mandate for Peter to what? Feed his lambs and shepherd his sheep and feed his sheep. Now, I want you to understand that this is his mandate to the church. This will be the mandate that Peter and the apostles will have when it comes to building God's church on the earth, the ecclesia. That he tells him, feed the lambs, feed my lambs. When you think of a lamb is a baby sheep, okay? It is a newborn. It has just entered into the world. So what does it drink? Milk. He's saying, give my little baby lambs milk so that they can grow strong enough at some point, right, to eat something else, right? And then he tells them, shepherd my sheep. Shepherd my sheep means tend to them, care for them, love them, lead them, guide them. He's leaving a huge mandate as the shepherd of the church, the pastor of the church, the apostle, the bishop. We know that in the history books, it's Peter and James, which is Jesus's brother, would be bishops of the very first church and congregation that is in the book of Acts. And from here, we see that is what Jesus is leaving the mandate. Give the newbies milk. Help them grow up big and strong in me, to learn and be able to have the capacity to take in more of the spiritual meat. But they're going to have to grow up. They're going to have to be able to drink the milk and then come off the bottles, all right? But then shepherd my sheep, tend to them, lead them, care for them, just as a shepherd does for the sheep. We talked, a few weeks ago about the shepherd and sheep, right? And what he does to take care of them. How he has to ensure that they are led by green pastures and they know his voice. But then he says, feed my sheep. What does that mean? So what do sheep eat? They eat of green pastures. And so he's telling them, lead them along green pastures. Have them follow you to a place in which they can consume of me. Lead them to the green pastures and feed them. Care for them. Let them be able to understand this word more by teaching and training them. And this is a huge mandate that he's left for Peter. He says, I'm telling you the very truth now. When you were young, you dressed yourself and went wherever you wished. But when you get old, you'll have to stretch out your hands while someone else dresses you and takes you to where you don't want to go. Wow. He said this to hint the kind of death by which Peter would glorify God. And then he commanded, follow me. So several years ago, I wrote On This Rock, which is a deep dive into the letters that Peter wrote to the church in Asia Minor, which is 1st and 2nd Peter. And there I had studied about how Peter died. He was martyred for the faith, and he actually refused to be crucified right side up because that was the way the Messiah was crucified, and he wanted to be crucified a different way. And so they crucified him upside down. And so Jesus is seeing something into the future and preparing Peter for the way that his death would glorify God. Can you imagine? And then he commanded, follow me. Turning his head, Peter noticed the disciple Jesus loved, which is John, following right behind. And when Peter noticed him, he asked Jesus, Master, what's going to happen to him? And Jesus said, if you want him to live until I come again, what's that to you? You follow me. So he tells him twice, feed, shepherd, feed, okay? And then follow. All right? He's reiterating some things. Feeding, shepherding, and then follow me. Follow me because I will lead you. I will teach you and train you how to do these things. And don't preoccupy yourself with anybody else, how anybody else is going to die, how anybody else is going to be martyred. Just follow me and do what I'm asking. He knew that Peter was feisty. He knew that Peter was stubborn. He knew there was a place in him that he was going to have to continue to train Peter up. And he is reminding him, just follow me. And I promise you, I will lead you and guide you and protect you, defend you in ways that you cannot possibly understand. This is how the rumor got out among the brothers that the disciple wouldn't die. So there was a rumor that got out that John would never die. But John is clarifying, but that's not what Jesus said. He simply said, if you want him to live until I come again, what's that to you? Meaning you're not in control, Peter. You're not in control of how all this happens. And you're going to have to just submit yourself to the process, to the plan of God. And John ultimately also will be martyred. So this is the same disciple who was eyewitness to all these things and wrote them down. And we all know that his eyewitness account is reliable and accurate. He's saying, I wrote all these things down. I was a witness, and what I testify to is true. We also know that John will write Revelation, the revelation of what is to come. He said, there are so many other things Jesus did. There are so many other things that are in the other gospels that other people wrote about. He said, and if they were all written down, that's not even all of them, is what he's saying. Each of them one by one. I can't imagine a world big enough to hold such a library of books. There would be so many books the world could not contain what all Jesus did. He said, I've only written this much to be able to capture what I could of the man who I did life with, whom I loved and who loved me. And we see this beautiful gospel of John as he finishes by declaring that there was so much more that Jesus did that wasn't even recorded and that it couldn't even be contained in a library of books that could fill the whole world. Wow, that's powerful. I hope you have enjoyed this deep dive into John. I know I have. I pray that your breakthrough is more than just on the horizon. I pray that you've received it by now, that your 21 days has drawn you closer to Jesus and a deeper relationship with him. And that as you've withdrawn, as you've withheld, as you push the plate, that he's met you right where you are. Until next time, friend. Bye.